I'll begin with the governor. I'll ask Mr. Rao. Sir, you rightly spoke about the high degree of corruption. More importantly, you spoke about legal reforms. You have yourself been a policeman. Are there any specific suggestions, apart of taking the high moral ground that we should not be corrupt, are there any specific steps that you would suggest that can be announced, implemented to ensure lower degrees of corruption in places that matter?
Surely. Lakshminarayan has mentioned about how technology can be leveraged, not merely to improve efficiencies and productivity and things like that, but also to sort of plug loopholes in implementation of various policies. Now, in regard to corruption, corruption is at various levels.
Correct.
You have at the political level, at the senior administrative level, and at the ground cutting edge level. Now, technology has no doubt helped a great deal in curbing corruption at the cutting edge level. For instance, delivery of certain public goods today can be done without any leakages by way of corrupt practices. But basically, the corruption has entered into the Indian body politic at the election level. In fact, today elections have become so expensive in India that you cannot contest an election either for a membership of the Legislative Assembly or Parliament or even panchayats or even village panchayats without spending a huge amount of money. I'll give you one illustration. We had a by-election to an assembly constituency called Munugod in Telangana recently, about 3 months ago, November, I think. You will not believe that one by-election, assembly by-election in Munugod has witnessed a total expenditure of more than 1,000 crores.
Oh.
They say that the two major parties which were in the contest, they paid, in fact, it's not merely hearsay or rumor, but actually on the TV it has been captured, voters telling how much they had received from each political party. They paid 5,000 rupees for a vote, 4,000 rupees for a vote. And at that rate, you can imagine what it would cost to conduct a general election in India. So I think one of the starting points for us is electoral reform. In fact, it is the high cost of elections, which in India is sort of the root cause for a lot of corruption at the high levels, at the political level. Now, no candidate for an election to a legislative assembly can afford to contest unless he has a war chest of at least 50 crores. Now, if a man spends 50 crores for contesting an election, and that too, not being sure whether he will win or not, ultimately when he wins, probably in the first chance or the second chance, I think his entire preoccupation will be to recover the money that he had contested to become a president. Now, therefore, I think the starting point in India about elections should be electoral reform. And electoral reform can take a number of forms. In fact, we can simplify our electoral process. But we are doing it in a way. For instance, in UK, an election takes place within 15 days of the announcement of the election. Now we are giving almost 2 months, 2.5 months. We cut down the interregnum between the announcement of an election, a poll, and the actual conduct of the election to probably 2 weeks. We can sort of regulate a lot of public meetings. For instance, we can ban flexi boards. huge amounts of money are spent on publicity, flexi boards and things like that. I still remember when I was studying in Presidency College, Chennai, for the Students' Union election in those days, in the 50s, in 1949, I think, each candidate, I believe, spent a few thousand rupees. In those days, few thousand rupees was a great sum of money. So a very root and branch reform was brought out the next year. They said 2-3 reforms. One was, they said, nobody can contest an election unless he participated in 3 debates.
Yeah, that's good.
That has eliminated a number of, non-serious candidates. Then they said, except visiting cards, there should be no publicity material printed out. And then they said that conduct of the election was shifted from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. Therefore, with all those chaps in the final year could not contest for election because the new elected people will take charge the next year. Like that, they brought a lot of reforms. So if we reduce the gap between the announcement of the election and the actual conduct of the election to about 2 weeks and prohibit a number of election propaganda materials, we can considerably reduce the expenditure on elections.
Okay,
and that is one part. That's the preventive part. But the post-election part, I think we have to bring out about a lot of changes in the electoral law. For instance, if now, as it stands now, an election petition is filed, and if the election petition succeeds, a winning candidate is debarred from the next election, more or less. He is disqualified first. So all those who are facing charges of corruption and against whom charges are framed in the courts of law, they should be prevented from voting in the assemblies and parliament. They can attend the parliament, but they cannot vote. And they cannot contest the next election till the present case is disposed of. Now then, the candidate, the chap against whom charges are laid, he will be eager and keen to close his case quickly. But now, a chap against whom there is a criminal case can prolong it for 15 years, 20 years. We are seeing it in Bihar. I don't have to tell you. Like that, there are a number of electoral reforms that can be brought about to reduce corruption in elections. And corruption in elections will, in train, bring down corruption at the lower levels also. That is one thing.
Okay, sir. I think we'll come back to you. There is a question that is addressed from the audience to Mr. Mohan Reddy. Sir, he says that it is Narayan Raghunathan who is asking this question. He says, can you enlighten us with NLC's expansion programs in green energy sector? Is that something that you would want to answer?
Yeah. He has seen chart. You may be interested in knowing more about the NLC India Limited. You might have seen the NLC India Limited. And today, NLC India Limited, in its portfolio, is operating around 1470 megawatts of renewable energy. In this 1370 megawatts is solar energy. Almost we are producing around 2,200 million units per annum. To further say, to technically capacity utilization of the power solar plants are hovering around 17.5 to 18.5. Of course, it's a technology which is coming up yet to get matured, and contractors and companies have to have depth of understanding about the technologies to utilize fully. It will naturally, transition is taking place, I'm sure, in coming 5 years, 10 years period. The solar energy, the same place will be captured more what we are capturing today. As coming to the prospects and progress of the NLC India Limited towards green energy, Number one, corporate plan is very clear. Another 4,500 megawatts of solar, in which 150 megawatts of wind is going to be added by 2030. And in the front of the clean coal technologies, lignite, we have taken up a pilot plant with a capex of 4,500 crores to convert the lignite to the methanol. These are the technologies are coming, and in coming days, these technologies will take the forward to the company. While this consuming the lignite in a proper way for the thermal power plants. I'm sure I'm so happy to be here with political support. And actually, with the political support, nothing is going to happen in front of the land acquisition, R&R issues, labor contract, this and that. With political support, this socio-economic activity, which is accommodating today 1 lakh people in this green city, green township, will continue. Because whose lignite reserves are there, clean coal technologies are coming, and companies diversifying into the solar and wind and going across the pan-India basis, going to big potential source of economic activity. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. We have with us Mr. Ranganathan, who was formerly with EY, and today he is extremely popular on the social media in terms of the multiple blogs that he puts out. I wanted Ranga to give us a perspective about the ballooning debt, both at the center and at the state, and what can be its ramifications. It was one of the points that Governor Rao had brought in, so I thought Ranga would be the right guy to take us forward on that.
Thank you, Pattabhiraman, and very good morning, very good afternoon to all of you. I think this is a very big issue, which of course gets discussed around the budget time. But the important aspect which is missing in the discussion is our overemphasis of measuring debt against GDP, rather than looking at how much of interest payments take away the revenue potential of the respective governments. We miss the wood for the trees when we talk about the Indian debt to GDP being far lower than what exists in countries like the US and Japan. But we miss the point that while our debt to GDP ratio may be somewhat more comfortable as compared to some of these countries, the amount of interest burden that exists on each budget, whether it is of the union government or of the state government, is far higher than what one could live with comfort. So if you look at the last year's central union budget data, the interest payment is roughly about 9.5 trillion rupees on the center's own revenue of less than 20 trillion rupees. So almost 45% of our tax revenues, which the union government gets, is taken away by interest. Similar situation prevails in the state as well. So I think the key would be to see how to look at this ratio rather than merely looking at the debt to GDP ratio. One of the important problems that have come about in the last about 6-7 years is the way the union government has been raising resources. There are two components to the resources that union government raises. One is the tax revenue that is shared with the state as per the Finance Commission recommendation. The other is the cesses and the surcharges which are not shareable. So if one looks at the data, the cesses and surcharges proportion to the overall tax revenue has significantly gone up in the last about 6 years. And this has deprived the state governments of their due share of revenue. So this has seriously impacted some of the states. The other factor is, while at the surface level, we feel very comfortable with the rising GST revenues month after month, but actually from a long-term trend line, the indirect tax revenues in the country has actually been coming down. And this has not been researched adequately, in my opinion. And this has also caused significant stress on the resource raising at the state level, because the states do not have much leeway now to raise resources on their own. They have to depend on the share of the GST that comes through the overall money raised through GST.
Ranga,
so there are some very fundamental and structural issues, both in the form of tax collection, as well as in the overall burden of interest to the overall tax revenues. So this discussion around debt needs to really move away from debt to GDP ratio as the single focal point to a much wider aspects of looking at the overall interest cost which the different governments are incurring. This would be my
I think Governor
quick brief
Rao
view
wants to
on the
make a
debt.
point.
In,
Yes,
in
Mr.
fact, in fact, I wanted to stress on this point in my opening remarks, but considering the constraint of time, I didn't mention it. For instance, I am told that the tax to GDP, tax revenue to GDP in India is about 11%.
Correct.
Against 21% in emerging economies and almost 34 or 35% in OECD.
Okay.
That means we are not raising enough resources, with the result that the interest burden as a ratio of the tax revenues is very high, and therefore we are not able to fund many of our development schemes which we would have otherwise liked to do.
Sir, there is
Now here again, I have a slightly different take on the cess part of it. I have already mentioned about the friction between center and the state governments on the question of tax devolution. The states complain that taxes are not coming. Enough. The devolution has been progressively being reduced by the center to the states by invoking this cess formula, so that they don't have to part with the money raised by cesses to the state governments. Now, if every state government, whatever revenues that it gets, it just throws away all those revenues in freebies, there is no point in giving more revenues to the state governments. And that will only worsen. That will only worsen the overall economic situation, and it will lead to more and more higher and higher inflation. That is my view.
We will move to the next question. Is that fine? This is a question from Amisha Kimani.
Sai.
This is I want to put this question across to Mr. Lakshmi Narayanan.
Power pack.
Sir, there is a question from Amisha Kimani. You are one of those great votaries of market economy. So I thought this question might be best addressed by you. She says, what is your opinion on gender inequality in the workplace? She's given a data. She says India ranks 135 out of 146 countries. How can this be improved over the next 25 years?
Yeah, good point. I think it is very well established. I think in one of the recent articles in the Hindu, they mentioned that the GDP of our country can go up by a significant percentage. They said it is, almost by 25 to 30% if women are empowered and more women come into leadership position. So including women in the overall economy, building this gender equality, etc., gender equity is a priority. A lot of micro level work is going on. One of the significant steps that the government of Tamil Nadu took is to reserve 50% of the seats for women in the local body elections. So these are activities that we do. But one thing that I advocated, this is after looking at the numbers from Arvind Eye Hospital, was to say Arvind Eye Hospital has about 92 to 95% of its staff as women, and 65% of the leadership position in that hospital is women. Now, this is an astonishing number. Of course, this is something that is peculiar to the type of industry, the type of services that they provide. But still, it is a number that is quite aspirational for other eye hospitals and other medical hospitals, etc. So one thing that whoever has the authority can do is to publish this number. Transparency is the first activity. if I say just a 2x2 quadrant, number of women in leadership, high, low, number of women in employment, high, low. The aspiration should be as usual to the top quadrant. If that is published, each of the companies, each of the ministries, every individual entity can evaluate where they stand with respect to the others in the same sector and make improvements so that more and more women get into employment. There are one or two quick points that I want to make about some of the other things, about technology. So electoral reforms, Dr. Rao spoke about it, very, very important aspect. One of the reasons apparently why Elon Musk took over Twitter is his ambition is to have the election in the US conducted on the internet. After the struggle, the debate, the challenges after the last election that they had between Trump and Biden, he said, we cannot go on like this. And he demonstrated its ability by conducting two quick polls, whether to allow Trump back into Twitter. He said, I'll conduct a poll on Twitter. He conducted a 24-hour poll in which 12 million people voted, based on which he took a decision. And his own position as the CEO in the company, he allowed the poll to be carried out for 6 or 12 hours. 8 million people voted, based on which he did that. So there are things that like that can happen in the future, hopefully. And the last point is about the insurance, vehicle insurance. Increasingly, those people all of us, I'm sure, are aware of this FASTag. FASTag, which came for toll, is already also being used for parking, for so many other things. People are saying, like you carry a wallet. These days, automobiles are also carrying a wallet. That wallet is FASTag. And can insurance companies not use that to deduct premium when the vehicles are used as a mechanism? Just a thought how technology can be leveraged for some of the varying problems that we have in the country. Thank you.
Mr. Vijay Srinivas, while possibly you can respond to that very interesting idea, Lakshmi, throughout, there is a question to you from Govind Kumar. He says that insurance companies focus on the creamy layer. First, is that true? And then he asks, how can insurance companies move from creamy layer to the mass middle class and the lower middle class?
Both are very interesting questions. I'll respond to what Mr. Lakshminarayan said right now. Technology, of course, has made it possible. And why not? It should be possible for insurance premium to be deducted from FASTag. Though, of course, with the changing scenario, whether the FASTags themselves will be there, we don't know, with what Mr. Gadkari has been promising. Some other method by which it's going to be linked to the number plate or something like that. He's proposing toll and other things will be collected. But yes, if there was a move, yes, why not? It could be done. Only thing is, basically, insurance is vehicle insurance especially is an annual policy. It has to be renewed every year consciously by the person, by the insured. And secondly, the insurer also has to accept it every year, whether to renew or not to renew. And thirdly, there is a corollary to this, what I said earlier. Obviously, the insured has to give his clearance for deduction of premium. Otherwise, it won't work out. If that clearance is given, then I'm sure that is possible. The moment he doesn't want to switch to another insurance company or he doesn't want to go through another intermediary, so many complications are there. Once all that is done and he says, yes, I don't mind my premium to be deducted through FASTag, why not? That's a good option. It could be done. Number one. Number two is about the creamy layer. Yes, it's true. I mean, I would not shy away from that. It's not exactly concentration on the creamy layer, but it's a question of where people, the insurance companies can get their people to whom they can convince to take an insurance. So the creamy layer obviously has got disposable income and perhaps better appreciation of insurance. So their concentration initially is perhaps to go over to that. So how do you tackle it? Tackling it comes perhaps here government involvement is also required. Perhaps involvement of other stakeholders are involved. I'll name out 2-3 schemes which came out from the government. One is called Pradhan Mantri Suraksha Bima Yojana. It's a simple personal accident policy guaranteeing 2 lakhs of claim in the event of death of the insured person. The premium was kept extremely low at 12 rupees. That is 1 rupee per month. And now it has been increased after 5 years, 6 years to about 20 rupees. Now here, the government pushed it. The government pushed it. The bankers were involved in it. And bankers went whole hog into it, trying to get people to enroll themselves for it. It became a success. And insurance companies, of course, it ultimately ended up with the government insurance companies only taking it because the premium was so low. And over the last 5 years, they have been bleeding on this portfolio. But whatever it is, more than 15 crores of people have been insured through this single policy. So that is how it has to be done. That is various things. And as I mentioned earlier when I was giving an introduction to the topic, what needs to be done is today there is a lot of emphasis on developing new products, fancy products. But what the regulator should also perhaps think of doing is zero in on 2, 3, 4 policies which will be of relevance to each individual in this country, and push for those, and also ensure that a certain percentage of the premium of an insurance company has to come from these people, this set of people. This is a method which has been used earlier also. Social sector norms, regulations are there, and so many things are there. That is one way from the part of the regulator. Second is development of awareness of the importance of insurance. There, everybody can be involved in it. It is from the point of view, the regulator should be involved in it. The insurance company should be forced to get involved in it. Other NGOs and educational institutions should be involved in it. Develop awareness of the need for insurance and its value. A combination of these 3 factors should see that the emphasis goes to more people getting insured, moving away from the creamy layer, and use of technology, of course, makes things so easy. As we witnessed with JAM, that is Jan Dhan Yojana, Aadhaar card, and in mobile. It was used to develop a fantastic thing by which today all payments are made online to beneficiaries direct to their accounts. Something like that we have to work out. Technology and all awareness, then having targets, identifying a few simple products, 3, 4, which have to be done by everybody. I think this will go a long way to increase more numbers of people and moving away the attention of insurance companies from creamy layer, essentially.
All right. Thank you. I have a question for the Governor. Governor Rao, what is your take on how the federal structure is playing out now? You yourself made a reference to the fact that the first 20 years it really did not matter. So, plus also you made a reference to the need for judiciary to reform. So, in the light of what we are seeing play out in the public domain, one between governors in general and the state, wherever the state does not have a party which is in the national government, plus the tussle between the ever-increasing apparent tussle between the judiciary and the parliament. What is your view on that? How does one reconcile things? Because all of these people are important from the larger framework of the economy.
One on the federal issue, that is the conflict between the governors and the state governments headed by the chief ministers. I think on merits, the governors are in the right, in the sense that they are questioning certain policies of the state government which are not in the larger interest of the country, larger interest of the state and also the country. But the manner in which the governors are going about is very reprehensible.
All right. And about the judiciary.
Because I'll just add a word to that.
Okay.
All said and done, the chief ministers are the elected representatives of the people. And the governments are elected governments. They are not nominated governments.
Correct.
Therefore, when a governor finds that that a state government is probably deviating from certain accepted norms and accepted principles, there should be a way of persuading the chief minister to be cautious and not to do so, but not seek a confrontation with the chief minister. That is why I said the manner in which the governors are going about is reprehensible. Then the second question you asked is about
the tussle between the judiciary and the parliament.
Judiciary and all. Here again, this is a conflict between the sovereignty of the people and the majesty of law. Now, the sovereignty of the people rests with the parliament and the elected assemblies. And therefore, to rule out any kind of role to the parliament and to the government in the appointment of judges is fundamentally wrong and is against what Dr. Ambedkar said in the Constituent Assembly while concluding the debate on appointment of superior judges. Now, Dr. Ambedkar made 2 points in his concluding remarks on this. He said, ex hypothesis, we should consult an expert in the field while appointing judges. Therefore, we should consult the Chief Justice of India. The second point he made was, which is very important, we must all note. He said, a power which we are not willing to give to the president, we cannot give to the Chief Justice of India. Therefore, what he did is a via media arrangement where the government of India consults the Chief Justice in regard to appointment of High Court judges and Supreme Court judges. But the collegium has, the Supreme Court, over the 3 cases, the first judge case, the second judge case, and the third judge case, has converted, has morphed what is a consultation into a consent, which to my mind is against the spirit of what Ambedkar had said in the Constituent Assembly. And this conflict will only be resolved when the parliament becomes much stronger and brings a new legislation striking down the collegium system.
All right.
I suppose I answered it.
Sorry?
I suppose I have answered your...
Yes, you've definitely given your point of view. Thank you very much to each one of the panelists for...
I also want to add 1 or 2 other things when I forgot to mention.
Yes, sir, quickly.
You know, labor law reforms, somebody has mentioned about land acquisition reforms, and farming laws. They are also basic reforms that the government of India and the state government should bring about. Otherwise, our economy cannot be, unless the foundation is strong, the superstructure cannot be strong. And these are foundational reforms.
Thank you very much. I'm extremely thankful to each one of the panelists, Governor Rao, Mr. Lakshmi Narayan, Mr. Mohan Reddy, Mr. Vijay Srinivas, for having brought in their perspective, as also to the many people who had put up their questions on the chat. There have been a few questions which either overlapped or which we could not put to the panelists to answer. This has been an interesting morning for me. I'm sure it's been an interesting morning, educative morning for all of you. Thank you very much. And Jayanti will take over from here.
Thank you very much, Patavi sir. It's been very great, and you made the session very lively by moderating it. So I also once again thank the speakers. I see that there are a few questions. I'll try posting them to the speakers post the conference through email and maybe get the responses and share it back with you. Because in the need of time, we are not able to answer questions right now. So I take this opportunity to thank all the speakers. I know it's been because of the goodwill of History Sir, but also for the continuity of IE. I really thank you all for taking out time today morning and giving us such enlightening thoughts on how to take forward. So I think it's always very comfortable to rest on our laurels, but it is also very necessary to question us and to see if we are going on the right path. And I think this seminar gives us the idea and also has made us question ourselves of how each sector should focus to be on that growth mode. I thank all the speakers and our participants, and I hope you all also had a great day just like we had. Thank you very much and have a great rest of the day. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Patabi and Jayanti.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I think we can leave.